Ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is Eric Dimmenstein from Ground Control Touring. I'm on Promoter 101.
Well, good morning and welcome to Promoter 101 Podcast Live. It's episode 49 and we're coming to you live from Seattle, Washington at the Western Arts Alliance Conference. I'm Dan Steinberg and this is Luke Pierce.
Great to be here. Welcome to WA. We're so excited today to be joined by ICM Partners Andrea Johnson, the Triple Doors Scott Giampino, and NS2's Brian Penix. We're going to be joining today on a litany of things on our panel today. We're going to talk about the news of the week, as well as some questions from our audience here at WA.
Hi, this is Heath Miller, President and founder of XSDB Entertainment, as well as Vice President of Webster Hall. I'm on Promoter 101.
But first, let's tell you what else we've got coming up as we continue our live Promoter 101 podcast tour.
Nothing like plugging ourselves at a thing that we're performing out here, Dan. Berklee College of Music, we're going to be coming to you in Boston on Thursday, October 12th, where we'll be joined with special guest from Paradigm, Todd Walker.
He has the best sweater vest in the business, buddy.
He really does.
We'll be at IEBA in Nashville, October 16th with a super secret special guest. And you know what that means. We haven't confirmed shit yet.
It's true. Keep up with us on Twitter. Dan is at The Jew, the show is at Promoters 101, and I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
If you have any thoughts or feedback for the podcast, we want to hear from you. Send us an email to Steiny at promoter101.net. But hey, we are live today, so if you have questions, we're going to get to them. And feel free to interrogate any of these guests that got up early to hang out for this massive Washington crowd.
And be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast. Please keep spreading the word by telling your friends about our podcast.
And if you've missed any of the podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week we have a special reissue of episode 8 featuring the 888 Management's Bruce Calumet, who is responsible for Josh Abbott, Kaleo, and Chase Rice. And we follow that up with a Tech Corner with Scott Perry, which is pretty amazing. And Dave Brooks stops by for the news of the week. If you haven't heard it, it's new to you, Luke.
Absolutely.
Hey, this is Mike McGinley.
Troy Blakely.
Mitch Rose.
Peter Katzis.
Mike Hayes. Tony from APA. Vince Bannon.
Sean Healy.
Steve Rennian.
Rick Canny.
Sam Kinkin.
Rob McDurf.
Happy to be here on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
We're going to hit some quick bullet points news of the week. For those of you who are in our audience today, our podcast generally takes the form where Dan and I kind of break down the news and BS a little bit today. We will be getting to our panelists to our left here in just a second, but why don't we start with the news of the week?
Let's rejoice. Really? Cool. LCD Sound System has the #1 album in the world. If you're James Murphy, this is a great way to follow up the last amazing album, Midlife Crisis. 85,000 albums, that's unheard of right now these days.
It's a pretty good way to start your midlife crisis, right? You get your band back together after 20 years, play Madison Square Garden, come back with the #1 album. It's a pretty good way to put your stamp on a midlife crisis, I would say. According to Bloomberg, Apple has closed a licensing deal with Warner Music Group. Interestingly, it's the first agreement that the big three label groups have made since the launch of Apple Music in mid-2015, which makes it a significantly more complex deal than the straightforward re-up that we're seeing on the marketplace. Presumably, the deal forged earlier this year with Spotify, which saw Warner getting a lower rate and a few benchmarks met, provided two sides of the roadmap to the streaming service sides. What makes this impact is that Spotify doesn't necessarily operate as a key music retailer, and iTunes store is the Uber retailer. The new deal also covers iTunes. Sources tell Bloomberg that Warner Music has agreed to lower the previous rate it set with Apple Music and the previous iTunes deal. Sony Music is apparently close to a deal with Apple as well, according to these sources, who claim that the UMG deal is further off.
You want to talk about Taylor Swift?
I don't really, actually, but I suppose we have to, because everyone is. Taylor Swift's single, of course, the most added single in history here, closing out all the charts, all 189 positions on the chart, knocked off Despacito, which was on the top of the charts for 16 straight weeks. It was nearing a record that Mariah Carey almost hit 20 years ago.
You know, with her verified fan last week, with the new setup to pre-register for ticketing through Ticketmaster, the new single, it seems like she is her own mega universe, as if she's U2 or the Stones. She's just creating her own genre, and it continues to gross more and more money.
You know, I know we haven't introduced our panel yet for our podcast listeners at home, but I would love the opinion for our three esteemed guests over here about the verified fan campaign that Taylor Swift launched last week with Big Machine. Do you guys have any thoughts on this as agents, venue owners, and promoters and managers?
I think it's brilliant, quite honestly. I mean,
agree.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, you're basically having your fans engage in every aspect of an artist's well-being, you know, and you know, I'm not sure that the whole place in line based on what you do is legit. I really, you know, I'd have to see the evidence of that, but on paper it sounds amazing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this is money that's just going to end up in the secondary ticketing marketplace, so why shouldn't the artist earn it? And I was reading an article recently about, I mean, obviously I think buying stuff kind of, you know, gets you to the front of the line faster, but you can do things like, you know, posting social media, sharing with your friends that can also get you these points. Now, I think it's going to be interesting to see, the proof's going to be in the pudding when these tickets actually go on sale, because people are right now kind of trying to jockey for position for tour dates that don't exist yet. If it works, then I think it's brilliant, and we're going to see a lot of copycats. If it doesn't work, and if you get a lot of like disappointed teenage girls who spent $300 on Taylor Swift merch and still couldn't get a ticket, I think we're going to have a PR nightmare on our hands.
I'm pretty sure there are dates that do exist. I think that tour is completely routed.
But
it may not be public yet, but
right?
It hasn't been announced, but those dates exist. They know where that's going.
Right, but I'm just saying.
I'm sure Louis knows where every single one of those dates is going to be.
Oh, sure, but the general public doesn't know yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Wrapping up the news, let's talk about our badass of the week at Promoter 101. We want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on ICM's Rick Farrell. In the house today. Rick just won the WA Mentor Award, and he is an amazing industry leader and one hell of a guy, making him our this week's only Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congratulations, Mr. Farrell.
I'm Jason Miller. I'm the president of Live Nation New York, and I'm live and direct on Promoter 101.
We take time during each of our podcasts to break down Dan's ramblings on Twitter. If you guys aren't following Dan on Twitter, he's at the Jew. We're going to break down some of the tweets that Dan has put over last week. Start with,
how tweet of you?
When the agency asked for the venue, when an agency asked the venue for finals for a 4-wall date.
Yeah, the venues don't really have the inside of the deal unless they're co-promoting, so they don't know any of the artist numbers as far as the bonuses. So it's really a weird thing when you wouldn't go to the guy that signed the contract to begin with for those numbers.
Do you have this happen with support slots where people will reach out to you, where the support slot act will reach out to you and ask for finals on a headlining date?
Yeah, now they're asking for the settlement sheet too, which is dirty pool. Like, the opening agency's not supposed to get to look at those numbers. You're a guest. You don't look in the pantry.
What's your response in those situations?
Go fuck yourself.
There you go. When a venue GM talks an artist manager how to play in his room, thanks for the unassist, buddy.
Yeah, well, this is a great one because it was actually I teed this venue manager up to get on the phone with you. I begged you to talk to him and hear him out. And on the phone for 2 seconds after teeing this up, he totally told you should play the other venue. It just killed me.
And this was a good one. I mean, this was the choice between playing a slightly larger room and a kind of a cut down play, and we were looking like a half house play. And I mean, we want to talk about the specifics of why it broke down, but it was the easiest pass ever from the venue GM, who basically just said you should absolutely play the cut down option instead of or the smaller option instead of my cut down room.
Yeah, it really wasn't how I wanted that to play. It wasn't how I saw it. But all right, sure. I guess we're not playing your room, but don't bug me about your Dark Knight next time, I guess.
When a venue waits until after you clear a challenge to tell you about a change in the venue deal structure.
Well, this drives me nuts. I mean, the time to tell a promoter that the rental structure has changed is when we place the holds. When I go to negotiate the deal, you've given me your hold, and then I've gone to negotiate the deal with the artist, and then you come back when I'm ready to challenge and say, oh, things have changed. It's like, then I have to go back to the artist and say, they're just telling me this now, and they're like, why'd you send an offer? How come you didn't know? I look like an idiot because you were an idiot, and that's really not failure to the artist.
Yeah.
Dan, our deal's changed next time. For all shows. I'm just letting you know now.
I still love you, Scotty.
That's going to do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. You can follow Dan on Twitter @TheGium.
Hi, this is Bruce Solar from APA. I'm about to tell you some very, very secret stuff on Promoter 101.
Some birthdays this week. Celebrating some birthdays during the week of September 11th to September 18th, 2017.
On Monday, Jeff Fortier, Paul Emery, and the Triple Doors, Scott Giampino.
Hey. On Tuesday, wishing a happy birthday to Kevin Brady, Buddy Kirshner, and Benjamin Spritz.
Wednesday, Paradigm's Corey Christopher, ICM's Mike Hayes, and Steve Ozark.
On Thursday, happy birthday to Bill Carlton.
On Friday, AEG's Joe Litvag.
And on Saturday, happy birthday to Live Nation's Jason Wright.
And on Sunday, the author of our podcast theme song, APA's own Craig Newman.
Happy birthday to everybody from the gang at Promoter 101.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger. This is Lee Anderson. Kevin Lyman.
John Giddings. Jim Runge. Jeff White. Brian Zisk. Chuck Randall. Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Darielle Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFont.
Jake Gould.
Gary Smith. Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
So, the moment of the hour, right? Thank you all for joining us here this morning. I see coffees in hand. It's a sparse crowd, but a lively crowd here this morning. I want to introduce our panel, lovely to our left here. We'll start to my immediate left from ICM Partners, Miss Andrea Johnson.
Hello.
She reps Creative Chaser, 2 cellos, piano guys, Wilson Phillips, a bunch of the amazing projects.
Also joining us is the acclaimed talent buyer from Seattle's own Triple Door, Mr. Scott Giampino. Please make him feel loved.
Hello. And coming to us from ABI Management and NS2, Brian Penix, where he's responsible for Tommy Manuel, Simo, Annie McKee, Jerry Douglas, Greta Van Fleet. Give him a hand.
So this is a little bit new format that we're messing with because it's just an amazing amount of talent to have. So the concept of a panel is new for us, but the interaction and the back and forth, if you have questions, jump in at any time. Just come up to the mic so we can get you on the podcast. And if you do jump up, please say your name so people in the podcast world know who's asking the question. But let's just kick it off. I want to ask, when you guys together are trying to figure out what kind of artist you're going to want to get involved with, what are your processes on the elements that make you want to sign an act and be involved? You want to start, Brian?
Well, where they're at in their career is a big one, and what their work ethic is. Those are 2 big things. I also have a strict no asshole policy, and I think everyone at this table would agree with that one. But really, at the end of the day, it's what's the artist's vision, like where do they want to be in 3 or 4 years? Can I make a plan to get them there in 3 or 4 years? And do we have the same common elements and the same common goals? It's really that simple,
How much of the checklist of things that you have when you're looking to sign an artist, how much of those things are non-performance related? Like personality, vibe in a room, how much of that factors in your decision to engage an artist, how well you can work a room?
Honestly, that's about half of it, really. It really is. You got to know if they have personality so they can do an interview. Just simple stuff like that. You got to know that they're nice to their fan base. All those type of things.
Andrea, you worked with an artist that played violin that you're no longer with, that I would say the no asshole rule definitely would have disqualified him immediately.
Yeah. Well, look, I was working for a different company at the time, and in agency world anyway, there are things that we have to do for political reasons occasionally.
No, and the question would more be, at what point is the business so strong that it's worthwhile dealing with somebody that's difficult?
Well, right. There's going to be a threshold of pain at which it's no longer worth it. But we all know of artists out there who sell out every night and make 6-figure box office and more, and they're terrible humans. But somebody's working with them because somebody wants to make the money. So I think it just depends on what your appetite for that is.
Scott, when you're showcasing an artist and you've got, maybe 3-4 songs in a night to impress a crowd like you did last night at the Triple Door for the showcase you had, what are you looking for as a promoter at a venue, as a venue owner to book the next talent? What's the key?
Well, we have a really wide palette of kind of talent that we'll book, and we're looking for quality acts, like you mentioned, and acts that are going to sell tickets and are going to attract a crowd that's going to come out and spend money on food and drinks, because we have that whole component as part of our model. We got to bring, we could book Tegan and Sarah, all day long and sell the tickets, but the kids are, no, they're not kids, 25-year-olds, but they're going to come out and they're just not going to spend the money. So we need that sort of artist that's going to appeal to people that are going to come out, enjoy a quality show in a great setting, and spend money on food and drinks. And then we have to turn it around and do it again. So we can, with 250 seats, we can appeal to so many different kinds of eclectic music night after night.
Where does that filter start for you? Does it start at the business? Does it start at the music? Like, what are you looking for to kind of start filtering down and narrowing down with the kind of acts that you're putting into your room?
It's mostly the music. I mean, it's about the music, and it's about the experience for the patrons. Because they don't go out a lot. Like we have Jerry Douglas coming. Pretty soon, and the crowd that's going to come to that, they're not going out every night. No. Maybe once a month. So it's a big night out. So we want to elevate their experience, and that's what it's all about.
Okay, so let's talk about the balance between a hard ticket date and a performing arts center date, and where it makes sense to go play a performing arts center, or when it's more important to have, instead of a presenter, buying the date, a promoter, and why those things might come into play and how you decide to play one or the other. Andrea?
Well, certainly in the early stages of artist development, if the artist is stylistically appropriate for the Performing Arts Center marketplace, I generally like to go to the venue first. It's really situational, because some venues are set up to buy talent, really kind of wrap their arms around a project, and some of them need maybe a little bit of an injection of capital in order to make it happen. So in a perfect situation, it's usually, some combination of the two. So whether that's a performing arts center that kind of takes the risk themselves, which is great, or
like a Seattle Theater Group kind of thing?
Yeah, or something where somebody like you is partnering with the building, not just a straight rental, but like a co-promotion, or something where you really get the benefit of the grassroots marketing, the folks that have built the list for years and years with boots on the ground.
Okay.
And is that like a middle step? You have in terms of artist development, if you've got the straight venue subscription play where you're going direct to a venue, then you have, Dan as a hard ticket promoter on the other end of the spectrum, like the middle ground of finding a great partner and finding a great relationship where, Scott and Dan, for a great example, have done a ton of business together and have a great deal that work together. How important is that middle step in defining the relationship with the promoter to the artist in the marketplace?
Subscriptions have largely gone the way of the dodo, and performing arts centers anyway. Most people don't have subscriptions. Maybe you have a brochure where it's okay, you can pick 5 and you get a discount or something like that. But for the most part, outside of Broadway and symphony, like fine arts stuff, most people don't do subscriptions anymore. So I kind of don't take that into account. It's more of like, first of all, it's about volume. If you're promoting 500 shows a year, it can be difficult to really get into the nooks and crannies sometimes, depending on the project, and really kind of make Market X, Y, or Z great for a developing act. So if I've got a performing arts center, a smaller venue there that I know is going to wrap their arms around the project and really give it 125%, then maybe I pick that over the promoter play the first time around. So, it's situational.
Sure.
I want to take a second to go back and explain for anyone that doesn't know, hard ticket would be somebody taking risk to sell a show with the ticket price has to cover the investment to make or lose a show, whereas there's no grants involved and there's really nothing supporting it. There's no sponsorship. It really has to make or lose on its own dollar. So in the cases of performing arts centers, in a lot of cases, there's other revenues that might help. They might have their own rental that they can go in the pot. They may have the ticketing money. They have the bar, maybe. They have parking. Maybe they have grants. So it gives us a little more protected scenario for the artist to create. So that's the difference between soft and hard ticket kind of setup.
Brian, you've got to have an interesting perspective on this, but being both a manager and a promoter on this side of things, what are you looking for on the promoter side of your business in terms of a great partner in a venue?
Oh, okay. So you flipped it on me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. I mean, number one, it always starts with a deal. I mean, if it's a bad venue deal, then you don't really want to have any part of that. So there's the deal. Then there's also like, does the venue really give you anything to offer other than four walls? Do they actually have a decent marketing department? Do they actually have like a decent, box office manager? I mean, just simple things like that. But most of all, more than anything, which is really, a key thing that Scott touched on does the venue provide an overall good experience for the audience and the artist? I mean, like, that's kind of it. I mean, like, is there a built-in crowd that goes there because they enjoy the experience of going there? I mean, it starts with that before I get to any of those other things we talked about, So.
Scott, when your room is now kind of the model that's being really successful. City Winery has basically replicated what you're doing in a very similar way in lots of markets, but this intimate 250 to 500 cap showroom is now starting to sweep the country. As the jazz clubs are kind of going away, these showcase rooms are coming out, and they're impossible to get in Vales in. But when you're deciding who's playing your room or whether you're going to promote it yourself or let someone in, how do you decide what's the best thing for your room when it comes to an act, as far as a rental or an in-house? What's that mixture in your mind?
Well, it's got to be like you said, it's the deal. It's really key, and also it's got to be that kind of artist, that's going to fit the room. And you touched on it. It's an intimate setting, so we can, an act that might play, 1,800 seats somewhere else, we can sell that and, charge ticket price for, twice as much money because people will pay for that intimacy. And that's the model that's helping us, further out and gain larger profile acts, night in and night out.
Is that something that you think could work anywhere? Or is it because Seattle's a very high-end market that has an economy that can support something like that?
I think it's more of the latter, actually. I don't think that could work in, secondary markets always. It would take time. And it took, honestly, it took years for the triple door to get on people's, radars and maps. And now we've been at it, 14 years. So it took a while to build it, but like say you went to, San Antonio, for instance, I think it would be more of a challenge to make it a go there than it would be in San Francisco or Chicago or...
Certainly the volume of business
Absolutely.
that you have to do to kind of make financial sense for you, I think would be difficult outside of a major market.
I mean, we're selling like 75,000 tickets a year. In a 250 capacity room.
Yeah.
So,
it doesn't sound like that many tickets, but when you think about you're doing it at 250 seat allotments at a time, that is a ridiculous number of events you're doing.
If I thought about it too much, I really...
You might have to curl up in the fetal position.
Yeah, pretty much. But I'm also in a beneficial spot as a buyer because now I book shows at Benaroya Hall, which is where Seattle Symphony plays. So I have a little bit of a trajectory, I can slide people up and down capacity-wise. So, Benaroya is 2,500 and 500, and then Triple Doors, 250. So I've moved acts back and forth, possibly if I can. I mean, the goal would be great to get them into the 2,500 cap room, but it's not always realistic.
I've got to ask, in this current day with, you're saying subscription series are kind of going away, and you're seeing less and less PBS tours that have any real value anymore, that it's not nearly as strong because there were so many, it kind of bled itself to death. Is the world, and you're seeing a lot of the grants go away, is the world of the art center, of nonprofits being able to throw money around and not worry about that stuff going away, or are they having to run themselves more like businesses now?
So my anecdotal take on this is, I started in the fine arts. And this was in, I think, 2001, when what's now called Opus 3 was still owned by ICM. And we used to be able to tour, I think, between 15 and 20 orchestras a year. Full orchestras, coast to coast. And there would probably be 50 buyers, maybe more, for these. And I'm talking about stuff that is even if it sells out, it's going to lose money because you're talking about running costs of $150,000 to $200,000 a night. You guys know, right? Like, you've got a 80-person orchestra playing Mahler on stage, plus a guest artist that they're paying $10,000 a night to for whatever concerto they're playing, and there's no conceivable way that anybody can make money on that. We used to be able to route 20 of those a year. Cut to 5 years later, and that was probably cut in half. And of course, after the recession and everybody's endowments blew up, I mean, maybe there are 15 markets in the country that can support this kind of thing anymore. So my point is that the evolution of the Performing Arts Center has been rapid, and we're seeing it in what people program, because they don't replace whatever, the chamber orchestra playing Bach with, I don't know, a dance company. They replace it with a rock show, or they partner with a promoter, do something that's going to actually program to the bottom line. So it's very, very different than what it was. I don't know. Does anybody agreed? Yes.
Any nods from the audience? We skipped over for just a second too, but I kind of actually, being that it's Western Arts Alliance and we're in Seattle, I want to talk about Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, for a second, because this is an area of the country that's experienced an incredible boom in the past 10 years. There's always talks of the number of people moving to Seattle, the number of people moving to Portland. What's it been like for you as a buyer in the marketplace here to experience and be around that, to live here, and how has that affected your business? And yours too, Dan.
Well, it takes me longer to get to work, that's for sure, because traffic is ridiculous. Yeah. But, last year, like I was saying earlier, 60,000 people moved here. This year, maybe it's going to be 100,000.
Wow.
I mean, it's a lot of laundry. So, the one thing that I'm grappling with is, management where I work and stuff, they're like, we got to reach these people. They're new to town. They have money. They want to spend it. A presumption, but it's expensive to live here. But I don't know if they're the kind of, most of them are going to be going out to concerts or not. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to really tap into that. But our numbers are consistent. They haven't increased. They haven't actually gone down either. So besides the fact that there's people are lip servicing this, so many people moving to town, I don't know if it's translating into more ticket sales. I can't tell yet. It's too early.
What do you think, Dad?
Well, I think there's an equal number of people moving to a market as additional traffic of shows that are playing. So Seattle's probably keeping up with the amount of extra traffic we're getting. So I don't necessarily see that shows are increasing in general, more people coming. Because Portland, Seattle, Bend is the fastest growing, Bend, Oregon, it's the fastest growing market in the Northwest. And I don't think the shows in Bend are selling any better. But there's certainly richer people that are moving to Bend, and they can afford more expensive tickets, and I've definitely been inching my ticket prices up in those rooms because they can afford those better seats in that market, which has allowed me to bring more shows to that town because there's only a 450 capacity theater in Bend. There's not a 2,200 seater, so I don't have the option of doing a lot of X, but I can get a really high ticket because people that can afford to live in Bend, it's like the Aspen of the Northwest.
It's an interesting model that you guys have to kind of combat, because it sounds like there's more. It's more about volume and doing more shows and more noise in the marketplace as compared to the wealth that's definitely rising here in Seattle, and it's so often written about in terms of inching up ticket prices. So for you guys as a long game, it's more about just doing more shows as compared to digging deeper into your marketplace and inch up ticket prices, or
well, I think me and Brian used to joke about this, that we were going to do less shows next year, that we were all going to focus on just the better shows and do less shows.
How's that working out?
Well, the problem is you guys keep fucking signing acts, and it's important to service your business as we're partners with you and Andrea and Brian, and not only do we want to make sure that we're taking care of your business, I don't want other promoters getting in bed with you guys because I'm lazy or not wanting your business. I'm taking all that stuff, so I continue to get not only the good stuff that we've already built, but the new stuff that you're experimenting with. I want to be there too. I also believe lightning strikes twice, and when Brian calls and says, I've picked up this new rock band, you got to hear Simo, they're amazing, I don't even have to hear the album. If you say they're amazing, I know that you've got great ears, you found Andy, you found Tommy, I'm there.
Yeah.
I don't need to spend an hour like diagnosing it, going, well, send me a link, I'll see what's up. I'm like, I want to go see him live. Let's book it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And that's a great point, Dan, because so much of this business, we'll say it all the time, is relationships. And right there, that's a relationship, it's like that level of trust. And a good agent, has a certain level of trust with buyers, Same thing with management and everything else, It goes back to that gut instinct, and servicing your relationships,
One of the things that I get asked most often at conferences like this is, well, how can I get a date on this thing that's already developed to a point where it's selling 2,000 to 5,000 hard tickets, right? And the answer is what you just said, right? Yeah. Get in early. When I say this is a thing that you should be looking at, you don't say, I've never heard of it, so my community's never heard of it. Never mind, we'll do something else later. Getting in on the ground floor is how you end up establishing history on an act, and at least most of us agents do try to still honor history.
Does history for performing arts centers exist? Does that matter?
Absolutely.
Because they're programming subscription stuff or a season that they want to keep doing different things, so they're probably not going to do the same act every year.
Yeah, you do run into that. In fact, I don't know, David, can I make a specific example here? So with Straight No Chaser, maybe I won't be too specific. It was Straight No Chaser, but it was a market in the Midwest where their first play was a university performing arts center, sold out in advance. And the next year, obviously, we're going to come back around. We were on an album cycle. They had to tour. And that presenter passed.
Right? On a show that sold out.
In advance. But to be fair, and in his defense, that wasn't the purpose of. He had a mission statement to bring kind of diverse programming, so he couldn't repeat things year after year. It just wasn't the raison d'etre of the place. But as a result of that, now AEG has the history in that market, and they're probably never going to get that show back, or at least not in the near future.
Is the word no a deal killer historically when you think about the guy that just says no on something that you're like, this is good, trust me, and someone that's not willing to take a chance? Do they move to the bottom of your Rolodex?
For me?
Yeah.
It doesn't help things. I want an explanation. If you give me a really good, honest answer, if you've really thought about it, you listen to the pitch, you listen to the music, whatever it happened to be, and your answer is, you know what, I'd love to help you out, but because my market is this and this, this and this, or we have historically had terrible luck with this kind of thing and I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction, I've got some respect for that, right? But if it's just a knee-jerk no when you didn't even listen, then yeah, I've got a fucking problem with that.
And how much of your time is spent forging those kind of relationships where it's a hard sell into the right venue and the right presenter? How much time are you spending banging your head against the wall to find the right relationship for your acts?
Well, I think, and you probably have a strong opinion on this as well. If I have to bang my head against a wall, maybe A, I probably shouldn't have signed the act. B, maybe I'm talking to the wrong person, or some combination of it.
I totally agree with that. It's funny. Banging a head against the wall is usually when you got 90% of a tour laid out and you're trying to find that one routing date, and it just, whether it be you can't find the right promoter, you can't find the right venue, the avails aren't there. The
dates won't clear.
The dates won't clear, all that. So that's when I'm banging my head up against the wall, because most of it is like, Tommy Manuel's going out. Agent calls, are 8 to 10 people that have good history, Dan being one of them, and we start laying out the tour, and then all of a sudden, oh crap, we need one routing date here, and that's when I'm banging my head up against the wall.
Salt Lake won't release their Broadway hold for no reason.
Yeah, that one. There you go. That's exactly one. And there's not a lot of options to get from Denver to Spokane to Seattle. You got to go through there somehow or another. So
there's lovely gas stations all over those places. We'll just set up a stage in the parking lot. Tom, you'll love it. But let's talk about the role of deciding how you're going to tour. And in a lot of cases with performing arts centers, they're laying out their season a good year in advance in most cases. And with artists like Straight No Chaser and Tommy Emmanuel, in both cases, you guys are routing a little closer to 6 months out, in some cases to a year. So sometimes you guys aren't even that far ahead that you could do series, it seems. When those offers come in, Do they are they so strong that you'll route around them and you'll build a tour around them to play at Performing Arts Center? How does that work out?
Well, for Straight No Chaser at this point, probably not. I mean, just because the national on sale has got such kick that we don't. We have made exceptions, obviously, in the past for things like. Yeah, right, exactly. People who have like big, strong series where maybe their their brochure deadline was 2 weeks before we were going to go on sale. It would be stupid to miss it.
Yeah, we just did that with Tommy in both Mesa and Austin, where the series was so powerful that we forewent our national on sale, and it made sense for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you just announce it like a little bit early, and the on sale is the same as everything else. There's always kind of some creative way to make it work, but my opinion on it is that if you're gonna play a room that's got a really beautiful brochure that they put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and tons of man hours into, you might as well take advantage of it, if at all possible.
You guys talked about the national on sale, and David Britz is in the room. If you wouldn't mind going to the mic, because I kind of want to address this to you, if that's okay. But I'm curious about the power of a national on sale, and Luke, if you could jump in, and Brian as well on this. I've seen more and more of this happening over the last couple of years, that we can't put a show up based on when we want to, and regardless of other traffic.
Yeah.
We have to go up on that day because the rest of the tour is going up that day. Why is that so important to your brand that every date goes up simultaneously?
In my opinion, it's cohesiveness with the announce, with all the marketing that is supporting the dates. We were talking about venues earlier, and you guys were mentioning making sure that fans enjoy the experience of going into a specific venue. We want to make sure that the announce and the on sale period for fans is an enjoyable experience, and it's convenient for them, and they understand the process, and it's simple. We don't want to overcomplicate the process, and when we are kind of sporadically announcing dates, it's not a cohesive experience for the fans. Fans get confused. We get inundated with questions. Well, why isn't this date going up? Or are you playing my market? And what about this? And if we can do a national on sale that is cohesive, it alleviates a lot of those issues.
I think one point too, I mean, if you want to speak to like the power of a national on sale in terms of just the marketing you might get from, say, Ticketmaster. Mm-hmm. Like the Ticketmaster national spec in terms of the marketing that they offer you, the data they're going to let you re-hit on that front of things is massive. I think, Chaser's a great example of an artist that's taken really good advantage of the Ticketmaster, national pre-sales, the client email notifications, and all those things that are important to it, and the marketing they can really deliver. And that only happens in a national on sale when it's spec'd out like that.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, the power and the reach of Ticketmaster and their database is huge, and they're really good partners when it comes to announce and on sale and marketing of tours like this, and just the different assets that they can deploy to reach fans, is amazing, and allows us to really hit fans, not just on that first tier, but that tertiary fan who may have come to a show 2 years ago, that we have their email and they love the show. They're not signed up to the email list. They're not what we call P1 active fans. Ticketmaster helps us unearth those fans and reach them and make sure that they know that, for sake of conversation, Straight No Chaser is going on the road.
I also think we're living in an era where it's so noisy that if you were lucky enough to get someone's attention once, then you need to have an actionable item for them. So if you know that you're going to put, with some exceptions obviously, 50 shows on sale, why not put them all up at once? Because if somebody goes to the Facebook page and sees, oh, well, they're not playing St. Louis, you may never get that person back again. I mean, hopefully you will, but you're not sure. So why would we not allow that person to take action in that moment?
How much do you guys study the comments the day a show goes on sale on Facebook with, why aren't you playing Hawaii? Why aren't you playing Tucson? I got to imagine that has to do with your next routing. Do you guys take that super seriously and like really go through that?
We monitor all comments, and I think this is across the board for all of our clients. We monitor the comments. We take note of markets where people are, it's sometimes outraged that you're not playing a specific market. And for us as managers and agents and promoters, I mean, that's what you want to see. I want people that are passionate and want the act to play the market. So we definitely take note of that. We had some instances this summer where we did an amphitheater tour, and we had fans that were so upset that when we announced our theater tour for the fall that we didn't announce Chicago or Cleveland or whatnot, and people were saying, this is my tradition, my entire holidays are going to be ruined if you're not playing this market. And so we had to appease those fans in a way to say, hey, listen, you may notice that we have a summer date in this market, so we can't announce 2 shows in the same market at the same time. So maybe if you wait a little bit,
Moms all over the country coming after David Britz.
Yeah.
Brian, do you do the same thing? Do you scrutinize those comments?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I want to go back on your previous question and kind of expand on that, just because I see it on both sides of the coin. Are
you talking about your manager and promoter hat on that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like from a management perspective, yes, I love to put all dates up on sale at the same time and do a national on sale. But there's always situations where that's not going to work. And I feel like the middle ground is you just want to make sure all your shows are announced at the same time. Just an announce, just be able to put it on a venue website and say the show's going on sale X date. Because there is some power in the consistency. I mean, some serious power. And there's usually a marketing or a publicity arm to it. Like, oh my gosh, the act's on Good Morning America, or oh my God, the act's on Paste Magazine Live. Whatever it is only going to help everybody, But on the flip side, if I got Tommy Emmanuel doing a national on sale and you call me up and say, hey, Santana's going on sale in the market on the same day, I'm probably going to push the on sale back a week, I mean, it's just, that's simple, obvious economics, And I think a lot of people get a little too rigid on those things, I mean, it's points like that is why I do business with you. Is you're going to research those things and let me know what's best for the artist in the market, period. But to go back on your comment question, yeah, I look at that stuff all the time, and in fact, I geek out on it when I see people bitching about not coming to a market, and I know that's sort of in the next wave. I'm like, yes, we're doing our jobs. Yeah. So, I look at it a lot, actually, yeah.
So that plays into your next routing on your hit list of those things?
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it just doesn't work market-wise. You'll have, a specific market where maybe there's not an appropriate venue, or, hey, listen, it was a market where the act underperformed and you just literally can't afford to go back. So you're sad for those fans because they keep asking to go to a specific market and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's it's frustrating for us because we want to play for anybody that wants us. But, there's a lot that goes into whether we play a specific market, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
And rounding is some pretty funny calculus, like on the agent promoter side of things, all of the factors that go into that, making sure that your weekly expenses are covered, like a lot of decisions go into factoring into the selection of markets in the day. You might have 5 show weeks where, you have 4 winners and you have to make a decision on that 5th show and what that's going to be. And the variety of factors and levers that factor into what that market's going to be is really interesting to me, because it's often a question of development, it's a question of money and making sure that you can gross enough to get through the market and your artist can hit whatever their weekly nut would be. It's a variety of factors and levers you have to pull in those things to make that final decision. And I'm sure you've seen across the board so many scenarios that leave your head scratching about why you're playing.
Touring is such a house of cards. Sometimes I sit back and go, how did any of this even happen? Like, how did we actually pull this thing off? Because it's just like this, I don't know, the chaos theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you have that moment of routing into a market that an act's never been there that first time, as a manager, what are you doing to make sure that you're protecting the act when you have no idea how the market's going to respond?
I mean, that's data driven for us. We will pull analytics through multiple platforms and determine, listen, is there an audience here? I'm definitely not a fan of just crap shooting and, hoping that people come out. I want to know, based on the data that exists, that we have fans in this market. And if we have fans in the market, then I may consider taking a shot, based on other factors. Is the right venue in the market? Is that venue available? Is the money right? Are the ticket prices right for our first time in the market? All those steps are thought through before we even consider a new market.
If an offer is strong enough, does any of that matter? Will you forego that stuff if it's just that good of money?
Well, and I think Brian and Luke and Andrea will fully understand this. Sometimes it's just not worth the money, and it's one of those things where your act's happiness, depends on two factors. One, that they're able to go out and work and pay their bills and, as Luke said, make their weekly nut. But also, if they walk out and they play for an empty house, who's getting that phone call. Oh, yeah. And that is a miserable phone call.
It doesn't matter how many times you preface it either. Hey, we're taking a lot of money for a really shit situation. Be happy about it. You could send that 10 times in advance and remind people of it, but you're going to get that
You're still going to get that call. And yeah.
It harkens back to the conversation before about, at what point is an act just too difficult to work with? It's a sliding scale of pain for everyone, but it's the same scenario. How much money is so much money that you won't turn down playing in a basement for 5 dudes, with cockroaches in the shower. Right.
But it's also sometimes those too good to be true scenarios, and we've all seen those where you see this offer come in and you're like, wait a minute, there's something that's not right here. And, it's trying to have a little foresight on those things and saying, hey, listen, this doesn't, a conversation with the agent and saying, hey, listen, something feels off here. This situation seems a little fishy.
A promoter who you've never heard of comes out of the woodwork and wants to put your act that's worth 1,500 tickets in major markets into an arena in Dodge City, for example,
Correct.
for $500,000.
Correct.
Perhaps you're not going to get paid on that one.
Right.
Those have got to be interesting moments because the setup for particularly Straight No Chaser, a basketball arena doesn't really lend itself to a cappella. Like sound bouncing off the walls is not an easy thing to make work in a room that's not built to be sound structurally like a beautiful performing arts center that's acoustically treated.
Yeah, and you have those scenarios, but there are scenarios where cut downs work. I mean, for example, one that comes to mind is Charlottesville, Virginia, where they've got a wonderful 1,000-seat theater, but once you outgrow that theater, there is no kind of larger theater to step up to. So in that market, you're going into the cut down arena, but the cut down arena is also where they do a Broadway subscription series. So people in that market are used to going to see performing arts type shows in a cut down arena. So I think that if you can get the sound right, which we've been able to do in that market, you can go into a cut down because the audience has now been trained to go see shows of our style in a cut-down arena. So I think it's also understanding the markets and the venues as well.
Yeah, and to expand on what you just said, because I'm very familiar with that arena, the arena was smart enough to get a great curtaining system.
Yeah,
so you can, dress the house appropriately, but also make it sound good. And it just kills me, and I'm sure it's killed you. There's so many, markets that doesn't have that perfect theater, that perfect venue scenario, but yet the arena won't invest in the appropriate curtaining system. It just kills me. But
playing
anyway.
some big cavernous 4,000 person theater, on a 270 degrees, and it's massive in the wrong room for it. JPJ is a great example of a place that got it right for sure.
Absolutely. Santa Cruz has got a arena that's like that. There's a beautiful little movie theater, the Rio, that's 550 seats or something. And then there's nothing between that and the basketball court. And it's an old barn, and they don't have the curtaining system, but the audience is used to going to see the symphony there and some of the biggest comics in the world. My example was going to be Bill Cosby, and then I realized that probably not a good idea. But one of those weird moments of making the artist understand why we're going to grab $50,000 on a Monday night in Santa Cruz.
That was a hard sell?
I was going to say, not every artist likes the yeah, but you're making a lot of money. Some of them do, but some of them that's not an acceptable answer.
I think to that point too, one of the big factors in all of it is where is an artist at in their particular stage of their career and life. And, you make some of those decisions callously or not, based on how much you give a shit, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes your lizard brain just kicks in. You're like, I want that money, and you have to move on from there. And some artists are at that point in their life where the money is valued more than the time away from home or whatever it might be. And in that case, the factor of money probably takes more of a weighting in your decision than whether it's the right room or all the other factors we just talked about.
Tell me more about your lizard brain. What is that?
You ever, you get an email from an agent and there's just a number on a piece of paper and my lizard brain I was like, I want that money. It happens every time a big amount of money comes in as an offer, and I just freak for 2 seconds and have to back myself off and say, yeah, okay, that's probably not the right thing to do. And go from there.
But that is the manager instinct, right? It's like, ooh, want that. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's going to help make this week work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what you guys think as, it's not really about the date as much as how the week plays out, because you've got a budget for the week, and I made enough on this date where I can maybe take a hit on this one and play a really cool venue that the artist is really going to enjoy.
Absolutely.
Or take a chance in a market that might need some love and development, and you may not be able to pull a gross out of a marketplace where you need to walk out with a certain amount of money. Big offers like that kind of finance the development of other markets. Within 500 miles in a week on a given. So it's got great value on all sides of those things, to me at least.
Before we let you guys go, can you tell us a couple acts that you guys are really excited about that you've either worked with or not, but you are really into right now that I think they're going to have a big year?
Greta Van Fleet, which is one of our clients, they're already having a big year, and it's just going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you hadn't checked them out, check them out. I mean, they're bringing back rock and roll, real deal rock and roll, and yeah, check them out.
They're selling out like the 500 seaters and bigger right now, right?
Yeah, and I think they just had their 4th LA show. So yeah, I mean they're on fire.
Nice. Scotty?
I get excited for legacy acts. So we have finally I got to book David Grisman, and I'm super stoked that he's coming to the room, and because he's played there as a guest. So I'm super stoked for that show. I'm also we got to book Laura Marling earlier this year. That was excellent. Now she's her star's rising and well deserved. So those two acts, those are different ends of a spectrum. And we also did Amadou and Miriam just recently, and it was both shows were fantastic, and it took some convincing to get Tom to do it, because I was like, we can charge more, the band will love it, the audience will lose their damn minds, and it all played out. And then of course I'm stoked because I look like a genius every once in a while, but a stop clock is right twice a day, so just playing the law of odds, I got lucky. But there's research into it. I'm making light of it, but that was a really special show.
Well, I love Greta Van Fleet. We were just talking about it last night. I also love Laura Marling. Just to plug an act on my roster who I'm excited about, I've got this little pop punk brass band called Lucky Chops who got big busking in the New York City subway system, which they still do, and are going to be on tour with Gogo Bordello this fall, and have blown up internationally. They're now like a festival headliner over there, and we're going to start developing them over here. So, they're playing the Riot Fests of the world. I know, it's a little bit of a departure.
Lucky Chops is playing Riot Fest?
They are, yeah.
Wow.
But they also, because of the nature of being able to lean into one side of the genre or the other, they can also absolutely kind of dial it back a bit and do theaters. So the PAC, I think, circuit at some point is going to be good for them once they've kind of got through the rock club kind of Gogo Bordello thing that they're doing now.
If there's a concept of an act having personality over anything else, it is clearly Lucky Chops. Those guys have so much charisma.
Are you in Lucky Dub's business? Are you doing shows?
It hasn't really happened yet. We've talked. They haven't played the Northwest, but we've talked a couple times to Ryan about it, and I'm a big fan of their manager John Davis, and it's like
John is great.
It's gonna happen at some point. I saw them at South by like 3 years ago or something.
Yeah,
and it was
that's right.
like there was a moment where it was just like I didn't know what I was watching. I was just like my mouth was on the ground. It was like this is so oddly sexual. Very like the lead singer is, or he's not a singer. The lead horn player is just so charismatic and out there and funny. It's like the Rob Lowe bad boy of like the '80s, like come to like the horn world or something. It's very odd.
It's a party on stage, and I defy you not to like it. There you go.
They've got some really good YouTube things that have gone viral that are amazing. It's the Adele video, right?
I think they went from like 75,000 Facebook likes when I picked them up to like 1 million within 2 months or something. It was
making you look like a genius. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. It was all me, folks. All me.
Well, this is a great agent and a great promoter because I'm sold on this band.
What about you, Luke? You got it? You got an act?
There's an act out of Nashville, Brian, I don't know if you know Dynamo, which is like an 11-piece jam band that has been buzzing about. They're literally just a PRO, CSAC, but it's an incredible band doing some business in Louisville, doing some business in Birmingham, but buzzing about, and they've got a bunch of label interests surrounding them. But I saw their live show after a bunch of people that I respect musically came up to me and said, you should go see the show. And I mean, it was like the 5 spot in Nashville, and there were like 14 people on stage. It was incredible.
How do you get 14 people on that stage?
Yeah, there were like 4 guitars playing at once. I mean, there was no empty space at all on that stage.
It's a shoehorn up there.
But it's very busty in the bass. If anyone's familiar with that, it's almost snarky puppy-esque kind of music, and it's a great jam band. It's going to be a phenomenal festival band one day for sure. And they play in Nashville once a month, and I make a point to see them every time they play. Cool. So.
Awesome. I want to take a moment and thank all 3 of our amazing guests, as well as David Britz for jumping in with being drafted, so to speak.
This is John Schultz.
Tom Windish.
Charlie from Crescent Ballroom.
Greg Newman.
Dave Brooks.
Dave Chumley here.
Dave Ratner.
John Holiday.
Doug Bicknell.
LX.
Imong Shah.
Elliot Lefkoe.
Gerald B. Henley.
Harlan Fry here.
Jack Ross.
Jason Miller.
Jeffrey Fox.
Joe Escalante.
Blair LeBlanc. Martin Atkins.
Neil Dixon.
Nick Farkas.
Paolo Palazzo.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101!
If you have any comments and you ever want to reach out, Steiny at promoter101.net will respond to every email, we promise.
And our next show, we're going to have Live Nation New York's Jason Miller, not to be confused with Live Nation Asia's Jason Miller. Same name, same company, totally different people. We're going to be joined from the Denver Post pot critic, Ricardo Baca, who's going to talk about the legalization of that sticky icky.
This is Eddie Clemens from United Talent Agency. I'm here on Promoter 101.
But until next time, we're wishing you sold out shows. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Mike McGinley. I'm here with Steiny, and we're on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.